Hey guys, I'm Kristen from College Lead. I help students with planning high school courses and extracurriculars and also guide them through the college application process. Welcome to the next episode of Campus Conversations with College Lead, where I interview current students and recent graduates of different colleges across the US to give you an idea of how you can prepare for college and high school and what campus life is like. So today we have a very exciting guest, Natalie. She is currently at UC Davis getting a PhD. So Natalie, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I grew up, I was homeschooled all the way until undergrad, and I chose to attend UC Davis for my undergrad, studying plant biology. And upon graduating, I realized that Davis is probably the best place to continue studying plant biology, so I chose to continue studying here for my PhD.
Awesome. Where did you go to high school?
So since I was homeschooled, we did this sort of thing where you can do independent study through an actual high school. So we did this through a private school. So I was an actual student there, but just under independent study. And so they just approved like all the coursework that I did as a homeschooler.
That's pretty interesting. Could you maybe walk me through how you decided to start homeschooling? I'm guessing it might have been a choice of your mom's, but why did you decide to continue with homeschooling?
Yeah, it was absolutely my parents' decision starting out, but I was given the option to either go to public high school or to stay homeschooled. To be honest, back then when I was just a freshman, I partially chose to remain as a homeschooler out of laziness because I was like, well, I've gone this far being homeschooled. I know for sure I'm going to go to a normal undergrad, so I'll just stay as is. And then also I wanted to remain homeschooled because it left a little more flexibility in my schedule for like extracurricular activities. And also I had access to more classes, like whatever class that I could find that was accepted by the school that I did independent study through, I could take. So that was very nice.
Where did you take classes from? Was it through the school that you did independent study with, or did you have other, resources where you could also take classes from?
Yeah, so I didn't take any classes through the school that I homeschooled with. I know that could have been an option, but I just didn't. I mostly did online classes that were approved by them. There's plenty of really good organizations out there nowadays that have online classes that will even prepare you for AP exams and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. So where did you take classes then in terms of like AP classes or regular classes?
Right. So up until, actually no, through high school, I did participate in a sort of homeschool co-op. So that was, a organization where a bunch of different homeschooled students would get together and have classes together in a classroom taught by, somebody who was familiar with the subject. So like writing or Latin or that sort of thing. And then the other more specialized classes like AP classes that I needed more guidance with, we used organizations such as the Potter's School. One other organization that we also homeschooled through was, oh gosh, I can't remember the name. You might have to make a cut here, actually.
PA homeschoolers?
Yes, PA homeschoolers, that, yeah. So I took a lot of AP classes through them, and the prep was good. For PA homeschoolers, the distinction between PA homeschoolers and the Potter's School is that for the Potter's School, there was a time where you meet, and you have class with a teacher on the computer, and you talk to the other students and the teacher. But for PA homeschoolers, it was mostly all self-paced. So you basically got out of the class what you put into it. And I mean, for most people, including myself who took it, who really applied themselves in the class, they're able to, at least pass the AP exam or do even better. So it works out pretty well, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm kind of curious about your extracurriculars as a homeschooler, because I know for public school students, it's very easy. They can just join or start a club within their school. But for homeschooling, you don't have access to a centralized community like that. So for you, how did you first find extracurricular activities? And then second, how did you develop them?
Right. So I really have to credit my mom because she was the driving force behind me doing most of the things that I did, because I don't know, as like a first grader, you don't really have the wherewithal to be like, oh, I want to do this, and then go seek out a way to do it. So the constant in my life, probably from the age of 4 till the end of high school, was martial arts. And like when I was 4, my mom just enrolled me in the local martial arts studio, and that was it. Like I did that until I graduated high school. And it was really great because, you know, you have to interact with your peers a lot in martial arts, and it's a different kind of interaction too, because, you know, a lot of the times you are physically beating each other up. So you have to, you know, be able to still hug and make up after that. So I think, it was really crucial for me to do that growing up, to develop my social skills, because, you know, the stereotype of homeschoolers is that they're poorly adjusted and a little bit socially awkward. And so, you know, most people, when they find out that I was homeschooled, they're pretty surprised. And I would attribute my being able to sort of blend in as a normal student to the fact that I did martial arts for so long. And then there were a few other activities that I did. For example, my mom also found out that one of the local high schools near me, like in the neighboring city, they would actually allow students from outside of the school to play in their high school band, just because they needed more people. And there were already a couple homeschoolers actually from the same co-op as me who played in that band. So I did high school band for like a year. It was really a good experience. And then I also did choir for a couple years, but this choir was like not associated with any school. It was like a professional children's choir, that sort of thing, that we also heard about through other people that we homeschooled with. So yeah, other homeschoolers are definitely a really good resource to find out what sorts of activities are good and constructive and feasible for your schedule.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think that's why homeschool co-ops in particular, at least in middle school and elementary school, is a super great resource to get started, and then just find those points of contact. And it's oftentimes the moms who already have kids in college who are the sort of the mentor for the rest of the moms.
Yeah, exactly. I definitely think homeschooling is not really something that can be done very successfully in isolation from other families. I definitely think it works out way better if you are in a community of other families who are also homeschooling. Like, I honestly can't really imagine how things would have gone if I didn't have other homeschooled peers. I don't think I would have been very happy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Have you ever considered going to a public school? I know you mentioned briefly you did, but why did you decide to continue homeschooling?
Right. So, you know, towards the end of high school, like probably senior year, I was honestly kind of regretting not going to a public high school, but it was mainly, I think, because I was really bored, and I was starting to realize that maybe I wanted to spend my days outside of the house and, you know, just come home during the day. And I mean, I still got to go out, you know, like 4 to 5 times a week for my extracurriculars, but that was, you know, just a couple hours a day. The rest of the day I was just, you know, at home, just doing work by myself, because my mother actually went back to working pretty much full time when I started high school again. So yeah, being self-motivated was like a little bit of a struggle there, because I was just bored, but that was really the only reason. Other than that, I just decided to stay homeschooled because I kind of wanted to be able to focus. Like, I, you know, always heard a lot about the high school drama from my friends who are in public school or private school at the time. And I know, you know, just because you go to a school, it doesn't mean there will be drama, but I admittedly was a bit of an antisocial teen. So I was just kind of like, I don't want the possibility of even going through that. But I honestly think if I had gone to public high school, it also would have been fine. I think either option would have been fine.
Mm-hmm. Out of curiosity, going back to classes, did you ever take classes at a community college?
Oh, yes. I think I took one community college class. And that was a good experience because, you know, everybody's of all different ages and backgrounds.
I've gotten questions from other students who are homeschooling who've asked me, is it better if I take an AP course or if I take a community college course? From your experience, what would you recommend?
To be honest, I can't really think of a really huge distinction, right? Because the main reason you take AP classes, in my opinion, is so you can, you know, well, for the college apps, I guess, because it looks good, but really, like, you want to potentially be able to use your score to get out of a class in undergrad. Because I took AP Lit, and I got like a 4 or whatever, I don't remember, and it was good enough to get me out of lower division English, which is great because I did not want to take that. But I also actually took a composition class at community college. I think that was the one class I took, and I believe that also would have been enough to get me out of lower division English. But it's really, in my opinion, a case-by-case basis, because it just depends on what the undergrad you go to accepts, because not all community college courses transfer perfectly to a particular university. But I don't want to say that this is 100% true, but I think that AP scores might be a little bit more universal in terms of what's accepted for course credit. So maybe an AP course might be better, but a community college course might be good just to get the experience of, you know, taking a college level course in a college setting, because an AP class is still a high school class. You're just using a college textbook.
I think that's a really helpful insight, especially on the benefits of taking either an AP or a community college course.
It's really helpful if you have the opportunity to take the exam for an AP language class, because a lot of colleges have foreign language requirements. I know UC Davis, I think for all the colleges except for the College of Biological Sciences and the College of Engineering have foreign language requirements. So I took the AP Spanish exam and I got like a 4 or 5 or something, and that would have been enough to exempt me from the foreign language requirement. But I was in the College of Biological Sciences, so I didn't have it anyway. But, you know, it's just nice if you did have that requirement.
For sure. And why, basic question, but why is it nice to knock out a few college requirements?
Yeah, it's nice just because the lower level classes, they're just really big, and they're just kind of a drag in terms of getting the assignments done, because a lot of the times they'll just have a lot of busy work type of assignments, and it's just nice to be able to get to the classes that are more related to your major as soon as possible. Because for me personally, even despite the fact that I was able to skip a couple classes in the beginning, it still took a good 2 years before I was able to like actually get into classes that were related to plant bio, and I was kind of like disheartened the first couple years.
Could you talk me through the college application process? How did you come up with what essay topics you were going to write about?
When approaching topics for the essays, I tried to not be corny, but looking back on my essays now, they most definitely were corny, and it's almost cringeworthy to read, but I think it's kind of hard to avoid when writing essays for applications. I definitely tried to focus on the you know, extracurricular activities I had that made me unique. Like I did martial arts from the age of 4 to 18. That's pretty uncommon, so I definitely focused on that a lot. I also wrote a lot about, you know, my work ethic and how I approach doing work being a homeschooler, because it's definitely different. You really have to be more self-motivated as a homeschooler to succeed, just because you don't necessarily have teachers, you know, breathing down your neck every other day. And yeah, that's about it.
So let's fast forward in the college application process. You have now been accepted to many colleges. Which ones were you deciding between or among at the end, and why did you choose UC Davis?
Yeah, so at the end, it was between Cal Poly SLO, UC Santa Cruz, and UC Davis. And ironically, Davis was the only school that did not offer me any money. Santa Cruz offered me quite a bit of money. I got the Regents Scholarship there, and even SLO offered me a scholarship, which is pretty uncommon for Cal Poly SLO, I think. But ultimately, in the end, I picked Davis because Davis is literally the best school in the US. Well, they're tied with Cornell, but they're the best school in the US to study plant biology. And I was not decided on going to graduate school at the time, but I knew that potentially I would be interested in it. So the fact that Davis is a R1, you know, a heavily research-focused institute, was another huge factor as to why I picked it. Like, Cal Poly SLO is a great college. It's in a beautiful location. Everybody that goes there is really happy. You know, people who go there are really equipped to find jobs, but the thing is, they're just not focused on research. And I knew that I wanted to at least do research as an undergrad, maybe not necessarily for a career. But since I wanted to do research, Davis is the place to go. And then Santa Cruz is, you know, nice. Campus is beautiful. Still hands down probably one of my favorite college campuses. But in terms of, you know, resources for plant bio, it's just not on the same level as Davis. So that's why I went there. And I feel very thankful that I knew what I wanted to do, because that was probably one of the biggest factors that led me to choosing my college. But another factor to choose another factor to consider if you're not entirely certain, because, you know, obviously you can't be certain what you want to do at age 18 when you haven't really gotten to try out things, is maybe go to a college that has more options. Because the other nice thing about Davis is that between the 3 universities that I was trying to pick, Davis definitely has the most options in terms of majors. They also have a lot of resources because it's just a physically really big campus. So if I'd gone to Davis and tried things out and been like, oh, you know, plant bio is really not for me, I definitely would have been able to find something else. And, you know, I would have been able to find something else at Santa Cruz or Cal Poly SLO also, but Davis has the most majors out of those 3 schools.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. And I really like how you were able to look at look at the specific department that you were interested in and were able to see, oh, this is actually ranked #1 in the area. It's a perfect school. Let's go here. Because I think if you know what you want to study, that's one of the best ways to choose your college. Because, yeah.
Right. If you have the means to, because I know, you won't be able to necessarily if you're looking at a college that's, you know, far, far away from the state that you currently live in, but the student or the visiting day was very convincing for me for Davis, because actually I had just set my mind on Santa Cruz because of the money until I visited Davis and got to talk to, you know, the reps from the plant bio department about the major. And obviously it's their job to convince people to come to Davis, but it was convincing enough for me.
Well, they did a good job, so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it turned out fine.
Yeah, I mean, if they're good at their job, it's a good indication of the quality of education there. What was campus life like at UC Davis, and how did you transition from a homeschool experience at home to a full-blown college campus?
Right. You know, honestly, the transition, I think it was a shock for everybody, not just me, because I was homeschooled. So I was vibing just fine with everybody, because, you know, if you live so for UC Davis, for the most part, all freshmen live in dorms just for the first year. And then after that, everybody has to move off campus. But once you move into that dorm, everybody is just very, very desperate to make friends. So it's just very easy to talk to people for the first few weeks. And I was able to pretty much instantly make friends.
One question I have is, given that UC Davis is very strong in plant biology, how competitive was it?
Honestly, not very. I'm going to be honest, just because there's not that many people interested in plant biology. Unless it's an impacted major. I'm sure that the impacted majors are a little bit more difficult to get into. So I believe that's like computer science and the design program at Davis are pretty impacted, but the plant bio program, not at all. So if you're interested in plant bio, just apply to Davis.
What do you mean by impacted major, and how do you find out if a major is impacted?
Impacted as in there's just too many people in it to the point where it's really difficult to even sign up for the required classes, even if you're a senior. Oh, wow. It's pretty ridiculous at some points, like particularly for computer science. Like, so I look on the UC Davis subreddit, I enjoy Reddit, and sometimes you will literally see people posting on there like, I need this computer science class, I will pay anybody like X amount of dollars to drop the class so I can enroll in it. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure they're not joking, honestly, because if you're not a computer science major, you can't even enroll in the classes until like the wait list period has passed. So like if you're a computer science minor, you can't even enroll. Only the majors can enroll in the classes at first. And then if there's any seats left, like the minors and other people who just want to take a computer science class can try to register, but you know, there's like never any slots left.
That is crazy. So
Yeah.
has there ever been a case where a senior wasn't able to graduate with a degree in CS because the student just was not able to register for a course because it was too full?
I don't personally know of any instances like that happening, but I definitely would not be surprised if that happened. And I mean, you know, a lot of the times in the UC system and other college systems, people end up having to take like an extra quarter or a fifth year, and oftentimes it is because they weren't able to register for a class that they needed to graduate that's only offered once a year, and it's really awful.
That's crazy. Imagine having to stay another quarter in college just to get that class.
Yeah.
But plant biology, you had no issues.
Actually, you know, for some of my classes I did, just because the regular bio major at UC Davis is huge. There's like several thousand students in it. And part of their major requirement is to take one upper div plant bio class with the lab. And the class that everybody goes for just happened to be one of my major requirements. So that class was like, yeah, that and a few other plant bio classes are actually very difficult to get into because the bio majors take them.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, but I guess it just happens and you were able to make it through, so.
Yeah. And thankfully the plant bio major is small enough to the point where you can actually talk to the academic advisor and like get attention from her, which is really nice. So normally if there are any issues like that, I would just talk to her and be like, hey, I really, you know, need this class. I'm a plant bio major, and she'd usually help. So that is one benefit of being in a small major. If you try, you can, you know, get a lot of attention. I mean, obviously, you know, if you're in a larger major, it doesn't mean you won't get any attention from any professors, but, you know, it may be a little bit more difficult. Like, I definitely was able to have the relationship with my major advisor to the extent that I did just because it was a smaller major.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's also really important insight. Out of curiosity, in college, when did you know that you wanted to apply for grad school?
I probably decided when I was like a junior. So I started interning in research labs when I was a freshman, the spring quarter. I gave myself the first 2 quarters without any sort of internship. And, you know, I just continued working in labs for the rest of undergrad and junior year. I just kind of decided that I liked doing research, and, you know, I wanted to do a job that was based on research. You know, I wanted to be the person asking the questions and making the decisions, and not necessarily just the hands, you know, pipetting and pouring things. So that's why I chose to go to grad school.
What things did you have to do in college to prepare for grad school?
So first of all, this may not apply for everybody in a few years, but I did have to take the GRE because kind of right now we're entering the, I guess, peak of schools starting to get rid of it. But in my year, I still had colleges that required GRE scores. Some didn't, but, you know, I had to take it anyway since some did. And then I also had, you know, I did have to get letters of rec again. And in, you know, in college, it's easier to really seek out who writes your letter of rec, because, you know, it could be the professor that you did research for, or a professor whose office hours you visited. And if you work in a lab and you don't interact much with the professor, because what's typical when working in a lab as an undergrad is most likely you will work under a graduate student or a postdoctoral researcher, but you can still have them write the letter, and then the professor will just sign it and pretend they wrote it. Everybody does it. It's perfectly fine. And then I also had to, let's see. Yeah, in terms of application prep, it was the GRE scores, the letters of rec, and then the essays. And unfortunately, the bad thing about applying to grad school is that the applications are quite expensive. You can apply to fee waivers, but I know they don't always get accepted. So that's one really, kind of bad thing about applying to grad school that I know people are definitely talking about in terms of trying to make grad school more accessible, for everybody, because it kind of is definitely currently a system that's set up to benefit, wealthy people better. But there are fee waivers. It is possible to get them. So try. And yeah, in terms of the applications I submitted, that was about it. Aside from all the other, personal info that they ask for.
Yeah, I think that's also just good to know for any viewers who may or may not be interested in pursuing a PhD. And kind of along those lines, what types of careers are available for people with a PhD? And along with that, what do you hope to do after you graduate?
So yeah, I can mainly speak in terms of the research sciences, life sciences, I guess. So most people, I guess, think about whether or not they want to continue along the road of being in academia, so like becoming a professor, or if they want to go into industry to work for a company. And then there's also the route of potentially becoming a researcher for a government organization, such as, the USDA or the FDA or the NIH. And I would say that the majority of people who I know who are currently in grad school as well, most of us are interested in working in industry. So like for a company, working as part of a research and development team, generally as a PhD level position, I have been told that you will generally enter as more of a managerial person, so potentially managing a team of people who work, who have their bachelors and masters. And yeah, there's also other options, such as being an editor for scientific journals and that sort of thing, which is pretty interesting, but obviously it's a little less common because there's not as many opportunities in that route. So I would say that I can't speak for results because, I'm still in grad school and I don't have a ton of acquaintances who have finished. But in terms of what people want to do right now, the majority of people that I know, myself included, are interested in pursuing a career at a company.
Well, what is grad school life like now then? Well, how about normal times before the pandemic and now during the pandemic?
Right, so pre-COVID. Let's see. I unfortunately won't be able to give a super good portrayal even pre-COVID, because pre-COVID I was still a first year, and your first year of grad school is really different from the other years. But pre-COVID, I started the program. Most of the time as a grad student, at least for my program, the first 2 years are pretty course heavy. So the first past 3 quarters of this year, I was pretty much taking a full course load. But during the fall and winter quarter, I did what are called lab rotations, which are basically just, for my program, it varies slightly, but for my program, it was 4 5-week kind of blocks of time of me working in different labs. And that was just to determine what lab I would end up at for doing my thesis research. So that was the majority of my fall and winter quarter, because, I had coursework, and then being a rotation student, it kind of does have a bit of a stigma, because it's, they say like, oh, don't worry too much about rotations, but it is a time where you kind of, want to prove yourself and obviously do well, because, if you don't work hard in the lab rotation, it's like they might not want to take you as their student. so it's just better to apply yourself as much as you can during the rotation period.
When you started grad school, did you have to decide what specialization you wanted to focus on at the time, or do you get to decide over the process of rotation?
Right, so you don't necessarily have to know exactly what you want to do even going into grad school, but it is definitely helpful to have kind of an idea as to what sort of research you want to do, because that's something that they really take into consideration for admissions, because, you know, like they don't want a cohort that is 10 people who are just interested in biochemistry. You know, they want maybe like 3 biochemists, a cell biologist, somebody who's interested in ecology and evolution. You know, they want diversity within a cohort. So that's why it is better if you can have like a vague idea of what you want to do, which I did, and it definitely got you know, melded a little bit as I went through the rotations, but yeah, going into the rotations I had like a broad research focus that I was interested in.
Awesome, cool. I think I'll probably ask one just last general question, which is, what advice do you have for any current homeschooled high school students or anyone who might be interested in pursuing a PhD?
I would say even if you're kind of interested in pursuing grad school at this point in high school, don't worry too much. Like obviously there are high schoolers out there who get to work in labs. Like, you know, in the lab that I interned at as an undergrad, there were high schoolers interning in the lab, but I never had the opportunity to do anything like that. And I'm pretty sure that most grad schools are very aware of the fact that a lot of high schoolers just are not going to have the opportunity to get to work in the lab. Obviously, if you seek out and are able to find an opportunity like that, definitely take it. But for now, I would focus on just, you know, getting good grades, doing well in your extracurriculars, making friends, and just, you know, maybe starting to think, what do I potentially want to do for my career? But in terms of like really, you know, beefing up your resume, trying to get into research at this stage, I would say don't worry too much. It's something that if you want to keep it in the back of your head, definitely do. But in my personal opinion, obviously, do not quote me, I'm not the authority on this, but for me, it was okay to kind of start worrying about that in undergrad. As a high schooler, my main focus was getting into undergrad.
Yeah, I would also second that, because the first time I ever worked in a lab was also in college. I was surrounded with a bunch of other people who did do research in high school, but at the same time, there was still a decent portion of students who were also doing research for the first time. So for any high schoolers, especially in the time of COVID, if you find that you are very interested in research, particularly STEM research, and don't have that opportunity now as a high schooler, there's no need to worry or be anxious about that, because the opportunity will come.
No worries whatsoever.
Yeah, actually, there is no expectation that you'll have any research experience. When you're an undergrad, things change and there'll be opportunities to match those expectations, but not the same, not applicable to high school.
Right, but starting out research as an undergrad, if you know, any mentor who mentors an undergrad in a research setting who is worth anything at all, they will be very understanding of the fact that you probably know nothing. Like, I knew absolutely nothing about research when I first started out, and the grad students who mentored me were very understanding of that and helped, you know, shape me into what I do today. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Natalie, for sharing all of this amazing insight. And to all my viewers who have made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode of Campus Conversations with College Lead. Also, if you found this video helpful, please give it a like and also subscribe to this channel for more content. And yeah, thank you again, Natalie, for your time. See you guys.